Welcome in to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. A podcast dedicated to everything you need to know about the squad. Hear from players, coaches, broadcasters, and those who cover the NBA on a daily basis. It's time to flock up. The New Orleans Pelicans podcast starts right now.
Hello, everyone, and welcome once again to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. Gus Kattengell, Jim Eichenhofer from Pelicans.com once again with you as we continue our post-season, end of the regular season player profiles. We've done the starters, we've done the reserves, and it's time to talk about a player, Jim Eichenhofer, who was drafted in the first round by the Pels a couple of years ago, has had to deal with some injuries. Yet we see some of the reasons why this organization views him so highly, why he's a special player. He's won a national championship, and he very easily is a building piece, right? I would
Sure.
consider and think and look at him. I'm curious, how do you feel about Jordan Hawkins season 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that stands out, unfortunately, is just his drop in efficiency. That he shot only 33% from three-point range, which that's kind of what you envision to be his forte, his biggest strength. So I think, we're going to talk about this a lot with Erin Summers, just how much of a factor the injuries were. But I think that's the biggest thing going forward is that he has to raise up his level of efficiency in the shooting categories just from the field, too. He shot 37%, which is a little bit below 38% as a rookie. His free throw shooting is great, so that doesn't have to worry about that. But the other parts of the game from the field and three-point range are things that he's going to have to improve. It was interesting. I looked at how he compares against other first-round picks from 2023. So the draft 2 years ago, Jordan Hawkins was the 14th overall pick. So I thought it would be interesting to look at, where does he rank among those 30 players that were drafted the same round as he was. And, some of this was a little bit surprising. For example, this past season, he was 10th in scoring average among first-round picks from that year at 10.8 per game. So, above where he was picked at 14th. He's 6th in three-pointers made per game at 2.0. Maybe the most interesting one, too, that was, if you think about it and you factor everything, and this might be the most disappointing part about it, is he was 15th in total minutes played at 1,320. You think about it, if he had been healthier to a much greater degree, he would have been so much higher in that. So he was really middle of the pack among first-rounders from 2 years ago in how much he got to play this season, but that number would have been so much higher if he hadn't had to deal with the back injuries. And last thing, too, stat-wise, one of the things I looked at, so if you look at all of the three-pointer shot in the league this season, the league average is 36% from the field, or from three-point range. So if you shoot 36%, you are literally an average three-point shooter in the NBA this season. He shot 33%, as I mentioned earlier, which he's going to have to improve. But from round 1 in 2023 when he was drafted, there's actually only 5 players out of those 30 that shot at least 36%. So, just kind of goes to show you that inefficiency from younger players and especially guards is actually pretty common. There's a lot of guys who struggle, especially as rookies, then they make a jump in their second year or their third year. And I think that's really what we're looking forward to seeing from Jordan Hawkins in year 3 is that he brings up a bunch of those numbers to a level where you say, we know this guy is a really good shooter, and now he's proving it repeatedly on the court.
No doubt. Erin Summers, team and sideline reporter, will give us her thoughts onto season 2. I think one of the things, too, is you always look during the summer for that next step, right? And going into season 2 last summer, helping on the defensive side. When I close my eyes and I think of the few games that he played this year, but I love he plays above the rim. We saw some dunks, right? We saw some aggressiveness by him. We saw him get some steals and really, I thought, improve on the defensive end. I know it's a small sample. Would you say he improved a little bit on the defensive end?
Yeah, he definitely did. I think he was more of a playmaker on the defensive end in terms of, you mentioned the steals, but also the blocks. We've seen him, I think in his rookie year, we saw him show his athleticism on offense to a level that we recognized, okay, this guy's a really good athlete. He's not just a spot-up shooter. But I think we saw on his second year on the defensive end, we saw that come to the court a lot more frequently than it did his first year. But I think in terms of his offseason, he's got to get stronger. He does get pushed sometimes, like he's trying to hold his ground. Defensively, he's trying to stop a ball handler, and the guy puts a shoulder into him and knocks him back a couple feet. So I think, this is something that Jordan has acknowledged before, and something that hopefully with a healthier offseason too, he'll be able to really get in the weight room and add some muscle and add some pounds to his frame so that he can be a little bit sturdier on the defensive end.
All right, let's hear what Erin has to say. Season 2 of Jordan Hawkins, our player profile continues now with him. All right, welcome back to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast, the official podcast of your New Orleans Pelicans. We'll continue our player profiles. Erin Summers still with us here as we go over a player by the name of Mr. Jordan Hawkins. I feel like I've used this reference several times. It's one of the benefits we get to do when we go to Summer League and look at these players and what they're able to do. And Jimmy, you were with us as well. And Jordan Hawkins was a storyline going into game 1 of Summer League. Do you guys remember what y'all's storylines were when the broadcast? I did the absolutely difficult part of going, hello guys, how are you doing? Erin, what do we want from Jordan Hawkins? That's my role. I just toss it to y'all. But you remember what you were thinking storyline-wise with Jordan in the summer?
Yeah, going into Jordan Hawkins' second year, so post-rookie season, finally getting a summer to work on his game, because out of the draft, it is a whirlwind for these players, and he won a national championship, so he played as long as you could in college and didn't get much of a break. So you wanted to see the growth from him from year 1 to year 2 be pretty big. His ability on the defensive end. You wanted to see him put the ball on the floor, drive to the basket, find another way to score and be effective when he's not just scoring off the screens and on the fly, shooting pull-ups and everything like that from outside. And we did see him in Summer League try those things out. He was more aggressive. He definitely was attacking the basket. And that was, I think we were impressed. Like, okay, clearly he's trying to take a step forward in this regard. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see a lot of it throughout the season because he kept dealing with his back injury.
Before we get into some of the specifics of his season, and obviously, he played 56 games, so he missed a couple extended chunks of the season, and it just seemed like he got interrupted a bunch of times when he was getting a little bit of momentum. But wanted to ask you about him just off the court in terms of just his personality. How would you describe him in terms of his approach to the game and just the way he is kind of off the court?
I wish people could see a little bit more of his personality, because he is a little reserved when you talk to him in a media setting. He is quiet, doesn't give up a lot, and I don't know if he'll grow into it as he gets more comfortable in the NBA. I think he's always been a quiet person and player from what I gathered when he was in college. But off the court, he's funny. He's got a little dry humor. He's a lovable guy too. Like, he gives hugs, he likes the people he works around. And you see a little bit warmer side to him, I guess, like different side to Hawk. And so it's tough. You don't get to see that in the media setting. On the court, you see somebody that's just confident, aggressive, always ready to take the shot. This season, however, I think you saw somebody that was dealing with a lot of frustrations. And at times people are like, well, has he lost his confidence? Is he in his head? And I don't think he's ever lost his confidence, because he will tell you, I'm a shooter. I've always been a shooter. I'm going to shoot. I don't have to worry about that part of my game. But when your back's hurting every time you try to take a shot or move, that is definitely going to affect your overall shot and how you're feeling about your game on the court. I don't worry about him bouncing back in that regard once he gets healthy. But, yeah, we got to get him to loosen up a little bit in front of the media, I think.
I think his personality in a different way reminds me a little bit of Herb, where people don't realize how funny he is.
Yeah.
Because I feel like there's a bunch of times this season where Hawk would just do like a quick one-liner, and it would make me laugh. And it was one of those things where it was under the radar. Like, if you're with 8 people, only like 2 or 3 maybe noticed that he was even joking. So he kind of has that kind of, quiet, like you said, sense of humor, and he'll throw some funny stuff in there, but it's very subtle. In terms of the season overall, I mean, one of the things that has to stand out is, I think that was disappointing beyond the fact that he missed as many games as he did. So if you think about it, there were so many guys on this team that had the opportunity far greater than what we expected that they were going to have going into the season. And if you had told me, and I would have punched you in the face, if you had told me that the Pelicans would have as many injuries as they were going to have, I would have said to you, Jordan Hawkins one of the silver linings is that he's going to be able to capitalize on that.
Right.
And we're going to get to see him. So I think that was one of the things that was really frustrating is the fact that, I mean, this, for a second-year guy, you're probably on a team that is supposed to be competitive and supposed to be in the playoffs. You'll never probably see a guy get a better chance on paper to contribute than what he did. But unfortunately, the injuries prevented him from really, fully taking advantage of that.
And I think that weighed on him too, because he saw an opportunity as, I don't want to say like players went down, but like that's kind of what happened.
Yeah.
He had that chance to play more minutes. And we've always seen him, when he's had those opportunities, break out and have huge games. His rookie season, nobody played in a back-to-back. He scores 34 points, drives the Pelicans to a win over Dallas. And you're like, dang, it can be really good. I think that's what we saw in Antonio Reeves towards the end of the season. His additional minutes, him getting into his rhythm and his ability to shoot, not only from outside, but get inside as well, is what we all expected from Hawk. And I think Hawk expected from himself, but he couldn't ever get into a real rhythm this season because, as you mentioned, he was in and out. He started the first games of the season, then he sat a few games, only played 6 more in November, 6 more in December. So he was in and out of the lineup so frequently that, he could never really get into a good rhythm.
It's time for Pella stats, and
all right.
These two numbers are very related to a lot of what you just touched on. The first stat is 8, and that is how many games this season that Jordan Hawkins scored 20-plus points. Unfortunately, of the 8 times that he had 20-plus points, only 2 of those happened after February 1st. So obviously he did a bunch of that at the beginning of the season. As a rookie, he had 5 games of 20-plus points, so 8 in his second year, 5 as a rookie. And then the second number is he shot 40.6% on threes in October before he was sidelined November 1st. That was the first game that he missed due to his back injury. October was the only month of the season that he made at least 35% of his three-point attempts. So he started incredibly well and then had the injury, and it seemed like, he was never able to get back to the way that he started the season. So which of those two do you want to talk about, or both?
I will talk about both.
Okay,
because
great.
you brought up the point that he had 8 games with 20-plus points or more. And if you actually look at his stats across the board, most of them are better than his rookie season. He scored more points. He played more minutes. He had more rebounds, more assists. So he did, regardless of the amount of time he was able to play, still incrementally increase in all areas. Yes, the shooting percentage did go down a little bit. I think that's definitely attributed to his back, but he was effective. I would like to, and this is a complete, I'm going off script
detour,
here. So
that's
yeah,
fine.
detour. Thank
That's
you.
fine.
I would like to point out the drastic increase on the defensive side. He had 30 steals to 19 and 23 blocks to 7 his rookie year. That
Blocks.
is an area that he absolutely needed to get better in, and I think he definitely did. Can he still improve? Absolutely. But we saw him stay in front of players a lot better than he did his first season, affect shots at the rim, and obviously look for steals. And he got out into a lot of fast break situations. So he was more aggressive on the defensive end than he was his rookie season. So I think that is something that we can kind of circle as at least a benefit of this season for him to work on that side of his game.
I like where you went there with the blocks because it was something I didn't look at a ton of his defensive stats, but when you think about, he did play more minutes total this season, but it wasn't that much more than he played as a rookie. I think it was like 1,300 this season, about 1,100 as a rookie. So for him to go from 7 blocks to 23 is a pretty significant jump. And it just anecdotally, if you remember back to the season, he had so many more of those athletic blocks where he came from the weak side and blocked somebody, or he had I think he had a couple chase downs where it was a fast break and he swatted somebody from behind. And I think one of the things that I keep thinking about as I watch him play too is on the offensive end, you think of him as a spot up shooter that he scores in a lot of the ways that you listed at the beginning, where he's coming off of screens, he's in the corner, the ball gets swung to him, his feet are set. But he has so much more athleticism than you realize.
Yeah.
And it comes out sometimes on the offensive end where he'll drive
some dunks
to the basket and throw it down on somebody. But it feels like going forward to next season and in the future, would you agree that that's one of the things that he's going to focus on, or that we want to see more from him, is just to bring that athleticism out, because it's clear that he has it. It's just a matter of bringing it to the court on a more consistent basis, which he definitely did to at least some extent this season.
I think it all starts with his health, and that's what he said. He said it's going to come down to getting the rest that he needs to get to a completely healthy spot. And then the strides that he made defensively, using his athleticism there, putting a little weight on so he can help when he is trying to get to the basket, driving through contact, being more confident in being aggressive and going up for stuff. Because, he isn't the biggest guy. It's something that Brandon Ingram always had to work on, and had to specifically, change his off-season training for, because he doesn't carry weight that way. Trey Murphy also made a point of doing the same thing. So I think that will help him just be more confident in using his athleticism and knowing that if he falls, he's going to be okay. Like, dealing with the back injury and falling a bunch or running into people probably isn't something he was like charging out there to do every night if, he's trying to stay healthy.
You just reminded me, we're having Wes Johnson on for some of these, and we talked to him a little bit about his player development. I think I found something that I can work on and focus on to help in the player development. We're going to have sessions with Jordan Hawkins. We take him over to the cafeteria and we show him how to put weight on, how to add that, the waistline,
the pasta bar.
Yes. No doubt. And believe me, I'm not saying that I'm the person to help him, with the back and all that. But a couple of years ago, I kind of had a little narrowing of the back thing, whatever. Long story short, like strengthen your core. But to your point, there are a lot of different things. And you're right. When your back doesn't feel well, and just in even more layman's terms, like when you do gardening, because it's springtime, when you redo the garden and you cut the grass, and that next morning you're sore, you're grumpy. I mean, you are. It doesn't make you feel good, and so to your point, I think a lot of that's going to be interesting this year or this off season to prep that for a long NBA season. There's a lot of rigors on that. It's a lot of jumping and stuff. Love the stat that you guys brought up with the blocks. That was fantastic, Erin, because that tells you I can't block a shot if I'm not in front of you. If I'm not close to you. I'm not following you. I'm doing that.
You're not understanding what you need to be doing on the defensive end, which was the knock on him before. He was behind the play a lot. And definitely pick that up for sure.
The other element of it, to your point too, that when I closed my eyes, I saw a lot of dunks. Alley-oops this year, playing above the rims. And, he said it before, he's a hooper. He wants to do all those things. And when I think of Jordan Hawkins, he's a guy that's capable of making all the shots. Baseline, jumper, elbow. We know he can shoot the three. He loves to drop to the basket, can dunk. You add the blocks. So that's the makings of an all-around game. It's just, understanding your body, what you need, got to be available, and then taking that next step of what we talked about so far in a lot of these podcasts. It's going to be a competitive training camp, Erin. And I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he attacks day one of training camp on a team that's going to have a lot of people looking for those minutes.
Yeah. I know, Jim, you were there when he spoke at the end of the season, and I asked him, how the season was for him and what it was going to look like going forward health-wise and where he was at after year two. And he said, big summer. I'm going to have a big summer going into year three. And he seems, whatever happened this past year, how frustrating it was, not going to hang on it. He is going to get to work in this off season because he didn't want to go through another season like he did this last year. Even his rookie season, I'm sure, was frustrating. He didn't play as much as he thought he was going to be. And, you never know how long your career is going to be. So it sounds like he's ready to get after it and attack year three big time.
Yeah, it's a crucial year. He's coming up on the third year. He was a lottery pick. Granted, it was 14th. It wasn't like he was in the top 2 or 3 guys where you have tons of hype and tons of expectations heaped upon you. But, he's definitely going to be one of those players that I think among many of the younger players on this team that we're going to keep an eye on in terms of what kind of progress he can make next season.
Erin Summers, team and sideline reporter, thank you so much for your time.
Absolutely.
Let's see what takes place there in the offseason for Jordan Hawkins. I know he'll definitely be a player, and I don't think he can go back to Summer League, right? I think it's 2 years.
There aren't really official rules.
Right.
It's generally accepted that
Is that
the
a player
guys
you
that
want to see in Summer League?
say this again.
Is that a player you think this team wants to see in Summer League?
That's a good question. I'm not really sure. I mean, it's hard to say at this point.
I think with the back and all that, maybe you don't want to.
And I don't know how much more he can really gain from it too,
Agreed.
of playing that level of competition.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried him last Summer League playing more point guard. I don't think it really went that well, and it was also something that's probably not going to carry over that much to the real NBA season. So yeah, I'd probably lean towards he won't be playing in Summer League, but we'll see.
Yeah, see what takes place for sure. One of the things I do want to get your opinion on, because the playoffs continue. Some teams, however, their seasons have come to an end. One in particular, the Milwaukee Bucks. Lots of attention and news coming from the end of that series. Not only did the Pacers win that series and move on, but it was the end of the game that allowed Indiana to go into the next round that everyone's talking about, and it's not, unfortunately, the stop that allowed Indiana to win the game.
Right,
It was,
or the game-winning basket that Tyrese Halliburton got.
exactly.
Yeah.
So what is everyone talking about?
I mean, we talked about a couple episodes ago. We talked about how the Bucks' future is tied a little bit to the Pelicans in terms of the Pelicans have control of their draft picks. They have swap rights in 2026. But we're not going to talk about that again this time. I mean, basically what happened on Tuesday night after Game 5, Pacers pull off a miracle comeback. They come back from 7 down in the last 40 seconds, which apparently hasn't happened in like 1,500 instances, something like that, where a team has overcome being down 7 or more with 40 seconds left in the game. But Tyrese Halliburton's father, John Halliburton, got out onto the court. He kind of got in Giannis Antetokounmpo's face. He waved. I think there was a towel or something that had Tyrese's face on it or something. He got in his face. According to Giannis, he started cursing at him and saying, "This is what we bleep and do, and this is how we do it in Indiana, and this is the bleep that we know we're all about." And so I thought it was unfortunate. And we should say, too, before we discuss this, that to his credit, John Halliburton did apologize. He put out a tweet, I guess, immediately after the game, pretty much saying, like, I apologize to the Pacers organization. I apologize to the Bucks. I apologize to Giannis because what I did was wrong. And I think Tyrese Halliburton immediately also said, like what my dad did. I think he used the word pops to describe his father. He said multiple times what he was out of line and that it's something that's unacceptable, and I'm going to talk to him and tell him, like, don't do this again. But I thought it was interesting, too. It sparked some discussion about kind of the role of members in the NBA, family members of players in the NBA. It does seem to me that it's getting a little bit more to the point where you're seeing people show up all the time and be prominent and be in front of the TV cameras. And it's like, to me, if you want to, I mean, there's several. I'll give you one example. Karl Anthony Towns' father, from what I've seen, he'll sit baseline. He's not trying to get in the camera. He's not trying to talk to the reporters all the time. That's fine if you want to do that. But I just feel like we're getting in these situations where, for example, Kenny Smith on TNT after the Pacers-Bucks incident said, come see the show, don't be the show. And I think that was a good way to put it as far as just family members. I don't know if this is the job of the NBA organizations, the coaches, you and me, Gus, but I feel like the word needs to be expressed to them that it's important to not interject yourself into things, because the main reason being is I don't think anything good can come from that. You might get people to know who you are, you might get whatever recognition, but for the most part, it never reflects well on the player. And I'll give you an example from I think this is about 10 years ago when Austin Reeves played here. He was in a situation where he was playing behind Jimmer Fredette, not for an entire season, not even maybe for a month. There was a brief period of time where in the rotation, Jimmer Fredette was playing more than him, or he was ahead of him on the depth chart. And Austin Rivers' brother tweeted basically, "I can't believe Jimmer Fredette is playing. My brother is better than him in every." He said, I'll quote this. He said, "Can't believe the Pelicans continue to play Fredette over my brother, yet my brother is better than him in every category. And Austin plays defense too." And I remember it was one of those things where it's like, I think people were talking about this after a game because somebody saw it, and you're talking about it on the bus or the plane after the game, and it's like, you can't do stuff like that. It's just, you gotta, as frustrated as you might be or whatever the situation is, you might want to talk trash the way Halliburton's father did. It's like you got to have some self-control and be like, how does this affect the most important person in any of the situation is the player? How does this affect them? You got to think that way before you do anything.
I think the thing, too, that I guess really stands out, because, again, I saw the replay several times, and, I mean, Giannis's forehead and his dad's forehead are touching.
Mm-hmm. Right. How does he get out on the court?
Why is he not
much?
being separated?
Right.
Because my thing is this, right? It's unfortunate, and maybe I think about this a little bit more because I have a small kid, right? And we all know what's happening in schools and in arenas, and you just don't know today, Jim. I mean, I hate saying that, but when the Super Bowl was here, we went through extra security, right? Because you just don't know. Mm-hmm. And if you're taking to the court, follow my logic here. If you're taking to the court, you're probably already not thinking logically.
Right.
You're probably not thinking clearly. Mm-hmm. Are you inebriated? Are you on something? Because normally we would all agree he probably isn't going to go on the court.
Right.
So for whatever reason, it's either an emotional state that's aroused or, he's had a few. There's something that he feels probably unordinarily the need to go and do something.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And once there's words exchanged, I don't know, man. What I mean, I would think that he wouldn't do something, but I don't know that as a player. I don't know that as a security guy. How do I know he doesn't have something in his hand?
Right?
I don't know, Jim. I think that to me is the biggest thing.
Yeah,
I don't know what somebody like that is doing and what they're capable of.
Right.
And that's my biggest.
I think also to that same point, if you're a father of one of the players, if you're Tyrese Halliburton's father or a father of any of the other Pacers, you wouldn't want some random guy walking out on the court. So why would you do it yourself?
Yeah,
you would be furious if say a Milwaukee Bucks fan or a father of a Milwaukee Bucks player ran out on the court and got in the face of a Pacers player. You would probably be like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" So why would you do it yourself? It's baffling from the outside looking in.
Holding the towel, you would do that. Holding the flag, whatever. That's the apology. Fine.
Right.
Maybe you get a fine or something. The fact that your forehead's touched, though, you touched the player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And this wasn't like in the tunnel. This wasn't on the. Giannis stood at the free throw line in despair as the game ended.
The season just ended, too.
Confetti is flying. Everyone's going to the field. And here comes his he puts his forehead on him.
Yeah, I don't get it.
It's so wild to me.
If there's anything good that can come out of it, though, I think I suggest people watch the 2 or 3 minute interview where Giannis addressed the specific thing and he just continues to impress me with how respectful he was. Yeah. That was actually a big element of his talk to the media, was just how important he thinks it is to just be respectful, and how he doesn't understand the mentality of, you win a game and you immediately, the first thing is not to go up to your son and hug him and say like, "Hey, good job, man. You make me so proud." Right. The first thing you do is go up to a guy on the opposing team and start cursing at him. It's just it's crazy.
And not to say that you would do this for anybody, right? But this is an instance where, like, one of the players we talked about earlier this week already, Draymond Green, who's had a history of maybe cutting your son underneath. I can't think of anything that Giannis has ever really done, right? Other than take too long on a free throw. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
He's
of all the
won
guys,
a championship.
of all the guys you would attack, like
that's
that.
what I'm getting at.
Just,
like, this isn't one of those things where this guy's a dirty player, or he makes a bucket in the first quarter, 11 minutes remaining in the first, and he's crotch chopping or something to, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's not
throwing the bird to the arena. Yeah.
It's like, it's now 3-0, so-and-so, and he's giving the arena the bird. It's interesting to see how Adam Silver and the NBA will react to this, and we'll close with this. Do you think they have to do something?
I mean, can you find parents of players? I don't really know. I don't think there's really any precedent for that. I mean,
well, the NFL fined the Falcons defensive coordinator for information that got out for his son using the phone number.
Yeah. Okay.
I just saw that.
So basically, they could find Tyrese Halliburton, basically, or sanction him somehow, or they could at least say,
Coach
like,
got fined
hey,
$100,000. I think the organization got fined as well.
I think, without knowing a lot of the details too, that I'm sure the NBA is going through right now, even saying like, hey, John Halliburton, you're going to have to the next home game that the Pacers have, you're going to have to stay home for this one, just to send the message that you can't be walking out on the court. And even if, that seems like a light punishment in comparison to what he did and what could have happened, it's still at least something. So I don't know. That would be my guess of what they could rule that.
I'm doing my best to not make this an entire podcast about it, but I think we actually could. We could do a whole series. Players that Graf would leave the broadcast booth for to give words to said player.
Yeah, well, maybe we can ask him about that when we have him on.
Give me your top 5, top 3. I think based off this season, I would say Pajensky, right? Because he still blames him for hurting Herb Jones.
Yeah.
I think Rudy Gobert is always going to be on there.
Right.
Always going to be on there. Who would be a third, do you think?
I don't know.
He has so many Pelicans killers.
We do still have 2 player reviews with Graf coming up, so maybe that can be either the third segment, or it can be the director's cut at the end of the episode.
I like that. You've been doing Pella stats, right, with our guest here as well. Maybe it'll be a Pella stat with player. Anyway, the point is, we're making a little light out of it, but it's so out of the ordinary that we're curious to see how the NBA does react, because I do think things like this affect the upcoming season, right? Are there extra security measures? Is it going to be where security in arenas are told under a minute? It's almost like football now, right? In big events, you'll see all of them with the bright yellow, orange jackets. You see it in the NBA Finals, like when it's a game clinching thing, like they all get it. They all start lining up.
Sure.
With like 10 seconds, 15. Like, I wonder if it's going to be where, hey, under a minute, security goes and kneels by the aisles, and when the buzzer sounds, they run and put a rope around. I don't know.
I mean, I don't want to sit here on this podcast and say anything that's against more security measures, but I honestly think in this case that really isolated and the way that you handle it is you take the family members and the parents in a room before the season or whenever you have a chance to do it and just be like, hey, here's this tape from Game 5 of the first round of the. Don't do this. Yeah. You see this film? Do not repeat this.
You do this, you can't sit courtside.
Right.
You do it.
Yeah.
Maybe you do it at the end.
Sure.
Anyway, Jim Eichenhofer, as always, go check him out over on Pelicans.com. There is an accompanying written piece to everything we do, including Erin on Jordan Hawkins. If you want to see what Jim has to add to that, as we thank Erin Summers for joining us, go to Pelicans.com. We'll see you next time on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast.
Thanks for listening to the New Orleans Pelicans podcast. Join us 3 times per week on Pelicans.com, the Pelicans mobile app, the iHeartRadio app, or where you get your podcasts. And be sure to give Jim and Gus a follow on X at Jim_Eichenhofer and GCat_17. We'll see you next time, right here on the New Orleans Pelicans podcast.